Welcome to HR After Dark, where we solve the people problems that are keeping you up at night.
Welcome back
With your
to
host,
HR After
Kayla
Dark.
Williams.
And in today's episode, we are going to be covering remote work challenges and some solutions that you might find for those challenges. Now, remote work, of course, was around way before the pandemic hit us in 2020, but it has taken more of a forefront stance in today's workforce over the past 4 years. And I think that is one thing that, we can all agree on is that remote work opportunities, there are a lot more of them now than there was before. And this has many benefits. Some companies, this does not work. Some companies, you must have people in the office, and some are, they have found a lot of benefits and even saving them a lot of cost by switching over to either a partial remote workforce or a full remote workforce. So today I'm going to cover 5 challenges that you might meet having a remote workforce. And then we're also going to cover, how you can kind of face those challenges. So first I want to talk about communication. So maintaining clear and effective communication can be challenging when teams are dispersed. You might get issues regarding different time zones or communication skills, which leads to a misinterpretation of messages that they are supposed to be receiving. And a lot of people say, okay, and this is a lot of companies that we've run into. They say, okay, we're going to, just try to communicate more. and I understand the thought process behind this statement. But it really needs to be more intentional, right? So implementing, regular communication channels, making sure that everyone's on the same thing. So whether that's, hey, we communicate via Google Chat or Teams, or maybe you're on Microsoft. So you're going to be communicating on Microsoft Teams. However that is, there needs to be a clear line of this is how we communicate. Now, like most workforces, there could be various lines of communication. So for instance, here at JER, we of course have email. We also have Teams, and we implement Zoho as well. And there are communication tools within that. So we have put out actual guidelines, a little table of, okay, if you're trying to communicate about this, then you should be using this tool. If you're trying to communicate about that, you should be using this tool. And so I think being clear cut about your communication tools will definitely help streamline your process and really make it easier for everyone. You can also have communication channels such as daily meetings, weekly, monthly. I know personally our leadership team they don't micromanage, but they like to be able to have that touch base so that employees have the opportunity to talk about anything that's coming up, any issues that they're having. It does create the opportunity to have more open communication across the team. Personally, I suggest not only having standing at least monthly leadership meetings with team members, if possible. Those for larger teams, that might not be possible. But also encouraging more co-working time too. Now, that's not the first thing that comes to your mind whenever you think about remote work. You don't think about co-working because everyone's spread about, everyone is remote. But let me tell you, there's something almost calming. There's something that is motivating about being able to shoot over my team member a message and say, hey, I'm just kind of working on some admin work, or I'm doing this. If you're not taking phone calls or have any meetings, do you want to jump on? And we'll jump on, we'll, work on our stuff in between. And sometimes we're talking work. Sometimes it's even personal because, that's kind of building that camaraderie, with your colleagues. And so all of these little tidbits, like I said, they all go into communications and how we are really working with our team to streamline processes and to take down the amount of miscommunication or misunderstandings that we have, especially as a remote team. Our next topic suggestion here is going to be our collaboration and team building. So yes, collaboration and team building is so important to a remote team, especially because in the office, you're constantly seeing your coworkers, your management, who is there, even if you don't speak to them a lot. With a remote team, and I hate to put it this way, but it's a bit of out of sight, out of mind. There might be someone that you don't have a lot of engagement with, you haven't worked on projects with, and then it's not that you completely forget they exist, but you might not remember, hey, this person has this expertise that I'm looking for. So things that you can do to encourage collaboration and team building. You can organize virtual team building activities, social events such as like online games, virtual coffee breaks, virtual co-working, like I was just talking about before, or even just themed video calls. Let's say, for instance, our team in HR services here at JER, we actually have a weekly team meeting that is an hour on Mondays to, kind of review our week, go over some stuff that we're doing, ask questions to each other that we might need to ask questions. And not only does it keep us on track, but sometimes we'll do a themed meeting. So if it's a birthday, for instance, we might all have our team backgrounds as birthday backgrounds. We also do what's called a one more thing, where after we go through, each one of us gives kind of a little bit of a report or whatever we need to say. At the end of it, we can do one more thing. And that could be personal or professional. Sometimes that looks like sharing a professional win. And sometimes that is, I was sharing my kids' roller derby. So it really just depends. But all of that works towards your team building. You can also implement more collaborative tools and platforms to make sure that, sharing documentation, virtual whiteboards, project management software, they all implement real-time collaboration and idea sharing. And so that can really, whenever your team knows how to use the systems and they know what they're using the systems for, you're going to be encouraging way more collaboration. So our next topic is going to be work-life balance. And have I heard it on this one, especially with the remote workforce. And I think this might even be a topic to dig deeper into in a future podcast. And you guys can let me know. You can always reach out to me and let me know what exactly is going to work for you. But work-life balance, believe it or not, is a bit harder to maintain when you're a remote worker. The boundaries between work and home become very blurred in remote setups. Employees struggle to disconnect from their work, and that can lead to burnout and decrease in productivity. I highly encourage, we talk about this sometimes with our clients and with us and our team, being able to first tell your employees that they need to be able to step away from their work. Meaning they have a dedicated workspace that whenever that day is over, whether it is shutting the door, shutting down the computer, it doesn't matter. Whatever they need to do to be able to symbolize that their work day is through. Because believe it or not, there have been some unofficial studies that, and there's a lot of them out there, that have actually shown that remote employees they take less time off, especially if they do have a flexible work arrangement. They do take less time off because those lines get blurred, and there tends to be this sense of not doing enough that's among them. So creating, and this goes into our suggestions for, fixing this issue or addressing this issue. Encouraging your employees to establish the clear boundaries between work and personal time by designating, designated working hours and creating a dedicated workspace within their home or wherever they're working from. There's also, you might look at offering flexible work arrangements. And now this can look like flexible scheduling or maybe even compressed work weeks to allow employees a better chance to balance their personal and professional responsibilities. And I've noticed that a lot of companies that have gone remote have done this successfully, as long as, the boundaries, the guidelines are outlined, and there is that open communication. This goes back to the communication part where we were just talking about how we communicate with our employees. And whenever you're doing something like having flexible work arrangements, communication is definitely key. So I would say that communication is a foundational block for this, because if you don't have the communication piece in line and structured, then you're gonna struggle. You're gonna struggle in implementing any sort of flexible work arrangement. Our next topic is technology and infrastructure. Now, I touched base on this a little bit in the beginning, but I want to go a little more in depth with this. So, our technology and infrastructure. You want to provide your employees with necessary equipment and resources such as laptops, monitors, internet stipends. Some companies even provide just a tech stipend in general if they have employees utilizing their cell phones to answer calls, because you want to ensure that they actually have access to reliable technology and even a stable internet connection. Now, a lot of remote companies or those going remote, they do test internet speed before hiring on employees or even switching an employee from in-office to being remote. But that kind of rolls into the tech stipend, where you got to think your employee is utilizing maybe their phone, their internet, their resources. And especially if you have some that live in a more rural area, you may find that they actually pay for their internet by gigabyte. A lot of us that live in the city don't think about this, but I personally have some colleagues of mine that live in more rural areas, and they pay, for this many a month. So looking at being able to give that stipend, making sure that they have everything that they need, physically, the products that they're using, such as the laptop, but as well as the systems such as, we mentioned Zoho, Teams, Google, any of those, and that they know how to utilize them, which goes into my next point, which is offer training and support. If your employees are not trained on your tools, on your devices, then you are missing out. You have employees that are not being as productive as they can be. Because employees need to be able to effectively navigate and troubleshoot any technical issues that they have. They should know who to go to if something is happening. Going into our next topic, we're going to cover employee engagement and motivation, which is a big topic. This is definitely going to be one of our topics in the future for a full podcast episode. And be ready, guys, because this is a big thing. If you want your employees to be productive, if you want your employees to be engaged, There's a lot that goes into this, and, even including all the way back to your company culture, which I feel like everything that we've talked about so far can really be rolled into engagement and motivation. But remote work can lead to a lot of feelings of isolation and decrease motivation among employees. They're not getting daily interactions, social connections that were, really found in that office environment before. And they can feel really disconnected. And whenever an employee feels disconnected from their company, it's hard to keep them around, right? That rolls over into our retention rate. If they don't know why they're working for the company that they're working for, then why are they going to stay? So you really want to foster a culture of recognition and appreciation, one that regularly acknowledges and recognizes and celebrates employees, their achievements, contributions. This can be through public praise or reward programs, or even verbal. I told you we have a call every Monday morning with our HR services team, and we have our little virtual winning jar, and we can go over that. We also do that in the company quarter meeting. So that's with the entirety of JER. We have no problem sharing with each other, even if it's the most simple thing like, hey, I was able to get through to this client today, and we had a great meeting. And considering, maybe some of my other meetings this week, I really feel like this is a win. And the employees come together and recognize each other, because whenever you start that culture at the top where leadership are setting that example, then it rolls on down. It really does. It rolls down through the employees and through the pyramid. You also want to encourage communication and feedback channels. You want to make sure that employees, they feel heard and valued, and you're providing those opportunities for professional development and growth to keep them engaged and motivated within their roles. I cannot explain to you exactly how important this is. I don't know what the words would be to stress how important this is for your employees to be able to give feedback and to really foster that open communication. My personal experience has, shown that most of the issues at work that have come up have been because of some sort of miscommunication, or maybe someone didn't provide the feedback that they really should have been providing. I mean, if someone doesn't have the feedback, let's say I do a project, and for some reason my manager, even though my project was great whenever I turned it in and everything seemed to go smoothly, but it wasn't maybe formatted the way that the company would like for it to be formatted. And I didn't know that someone went back behind me and had to reformat what I did in order to make it work. And now I've given that project again, and this happens again a second time. And then I'm being brought in for, some type of coaching or, what have you. And I had no idea that this was here, that this was an issue. Why? Because we didn't have that open communication and that continuous feedback. Someone once told me that no employee should ever be surprised if they are brought in for, for lack of a better term, like a talking to, or maybe a write-up or something like that. They should not be surprised. Why? Because in a workplace where there's open communication and continuous feedback, there's no surprise whenever something happens. What should have happened in that example that I gave, which is not a real example, guys, I promise. But what should have happened in that example would be whenever I went to go turn in that project, my leadership or whoever I was turning it into should have come back and said, hey, just so you know, this is how it needs to be formatted. Can you go back, get this done, and make sure that in the future this is, taken care of. And that would have given me an opportunity to ask questions and to assure that I understood for the future what's going to happen. And so again, this is probably one of the biggest things. If you're listening to this podcast, all throughout all of this, all of these things that we've gone over, is communication, bits on communication. This does not mean micromanaging. And this doesn't mean that, you need to necessarily be reaching out to every employee every single day. What it means is that it starts from the top and it rolls down. You need to be fostering open communication, opportunities for feedback, including for your training, projects, your leadership team, like I said, from top to bottom. And I think that whenever a company can really focus on that, we see great change. We see active, engaged employees who are happy with their work and who, as more employees, as your team builds, who honestly pass that along. And so, these are just a few of the things. Of course, in remote work, there are, just like in the office, there are a million things that can go wrong. There are a million issues that can happen. But fact is, if you address these as they come along, if you start off with a foundation, with your game plan as a foundation, and then you address problems as they come along, you say, hey, this is a problem. Let's create a process or a procedure, so that it doesn't happen again. Eventually you reach this point of stability within your remote team of, where they wouldn't even want to go back to the office. Why? Because they feel a part of your company and they're happy with where they're at and what they're doing. So I hope that this was at least some new knowledge, maybe some new stuff you've heard. Maybe it's some old that you might have just needed to hear again. Of course, I'm going to do some more episodes in the future about some various remote work topics, and we're going to dig deeper into some of these so that you guys can get more of a feel, especially because remote work is not going anywhere. It is only going to continue to grow now that the benefits have come up more and more often in 2023, 2024. So I hope that everyone has a wonderful day, and thank you for joining me here at HR After Dark.